AI in modern warfare is in focus as we learn more about the 12-day war, they're calling it that actually, between Israel and Iran, with some American participation, as you know by now. Joining us to talk about AI in the military and defense is Michelle Giuda, CEO of the Krach Institute for Tech Diplomacy at Purdue University. She's a former Assistant Secretary of State for Global Public Affairs in the first Trump administration. And I wish I hadn't had to read all your notes on this, because it's just very concerning, Michelle, at this point. I mean, it could be, I guess it's like anything. It's a tool that could be used for immense good, but it could also, with China or Russia or other places, it could be really serious if we don't monitor it.
That's right. I think we're seeing artificial intelligence and a number of emerging technologies reshape not only the battlefield, as we're seeing in the case of Iran, but the domains of power stretch far beyond the battlefield. The battlefield's also information, it's also financial, it's also commercial. So from a kinetic perspective, we're seeing it take place. We know our warfighters are using artificial intelligence to ingest a lot of information, make decisions a lot faster. Israel has been using it to prioritize targets in Gaza. Ukraine has been using it for some time in the fight against Russia. But, just look at the information space. Iran has been using generative AI to develop fake content and propaganda within its closed media environment to suppress dissent, to shape narratives there. That's information warfare. And you can go down the authoritarian list, as you said. If you look from a financial perspective, the PRC has strategically been deploying capital into our markets, into our U.S. and allied tech companies to have access to our IP, to our emerging technologies, to have undue influence in our markets. That's financial warfare. Commercially, you'll recall a few years ago, Russia ransomware shut down JBS. It was the largest food supply, meat supplier in the United States. That's commercial warfare. So warfare is taking place on the battlefield in different ways, thanks to artificial intelligence, but it also extends to all of these other domains. And technology is a cross-cutting thing. So for the United States, the big imperative is we just have to be better at the tech.
Can you describe some of the battlefield uses? I was in looking into some of the methods that are employed. It was fascinating, but also a little bit scary. I think, for example, it can save human lives, but if you save human lives, then leaders are probably less inclined to try to avoid conflict if they know they're not going to use any lives, which could end up starting something where even more lives are eventually lost. There's so many dots that connect with AI.
Well, AI is helping our warfighters connect those dots, and to have tools like artificial intelligence take what is really an overwhelming amount of data on the battlefield across a number of domains, ingest that and help to develop insights that can inform decisions is a really strategic tool. So it's helping accelerate decision-making and smarter decision-making in many ways. But in terms of how it's reshaping things, one of the really interesting things to recognize is that our technological edge in AI in many cases started from a commercial standpoint. These things weren't in the first case built for war. And NVIDIA is a really good example. What's powering the AI revolution and the tools that are reshaping the battlefield? It's NVIDIA's chips. 30 years ago, they started out as a company wanting to do 3D graphics for gaming and for multimedia. Meta is another really good example. Started out as Facebook, and we just saw in the news a few days ago they're going to be partnering with Anduril on augmented reality and virtual reality for combat technology. AWS was an internal tool for Amazon, where we're doing our online shopping. Now they're helping with cloud infrastructure for DoD. And so in many cases, these things started out as commercial first. They're being applied now to the battlefield in really interesting ways. But that's a really interesting call to action for a lot of business leaders, innovators, and builders who aren't necessarily in quote unquote defense tech, but everybody has a role to play in ensuring our technological advantage and in many cases our advantage on the battlefield.
I want to talk just quickly about, it's fascinating that Israel reportedly used AI with its drone program inside Iran to find leaders and high value targets. How would you use AI for that? Can you just help me?
Yeah, so it helps with sensors and identifying a lot of graphics and satellite imagery. Before it used to take a long time to comb through as a human a lot of these images to make sense of them. Some of them are high quality, some of them are really low quality. And so AI can help discern and start to make decisions from these types of technologies. And, you bring up a really interesting point with Israel. And if you look at how the United States and Israel has collaborated, if you look at the deals that the United States recently announced in the Middle East following President Trump's trip to the region with Saudi Arabia, with the UAE, with Qatar, all of these shaped around artificial intelligence and defense. It's the reason why these types of partnerships and alliances are so important, because not only do we have to be really good at the tech, so do our allies. And so if we're all consolidating around American-led tech or allied tech, we'll have a force multiplier advantage.
And I guess it's dangerous for us to just fall back on the notion that since we're the good guys, we need to go headlong into this because we know that the bad guys are going headlong into it as well. So that just sounds like an arms race. Sounds like an AI arms race, but we feel justified because, we all, and I'm not saying we don't wear the white hats in this country. I believe we do globally, but that's dangerous for us to feel like we're totally justified in, not instituting some of the safeguards that everyone should institute, but we know that our enemies will not probably. And they I'm sure they have malice or at least some intentions that aren't quite as honorable. Maybe we don't. Maybe all of ours aren't as honorable either, Michelle. It just seems like, we're going to have an arms race in AI, and both sides think that it's justified or can justify.
Yeah, well, think of it this way. Well, first of all, the bad guys aren't going to stop. So that's fact number one. But historically, if you think about after World War II, in 1945, the U.S. is the superpower, and we built the infrastructure of the free world that was based on institutions. For 2025 and beyond, into the 21st century, that infrastructure that we have to architect is going to be around technology, not institutions like the UN. So our imperative is that we design and implement an American-led and allied-led trusted tech stack across the world that represents our interests, represents our values like freedom and human rights and security and prosperity, so that we are shaping all of those domains of power versus the bad guys, to your point, who aren't going to stop. China wants to be the number one leader in artificial intelligence. Iran wants nuclear capability. So the task for us is to develop the best tech and to deploy it and be the backbone of that system for the free world for the rest of this century.
I like hearing you say those things out loud. I mean, I believe that, but we're constantly being, second guessing ourselves because just look at college campuses and the things that, that are, there are pro demonstrations for some things that don't really seem like human rights, but they have a point on the other hand as well, I guess, with what they're talking about. It just depends. You can't make it monolithic. Michelle, thank you. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
All right. Coming.